Volkswagen's improved Tiguan targets compact SUV and crossover customers alike, with a high-quality, well-priced package that's smarter and more efficient in this revised first-generation form. All the 4x4 you'll ever really need? Many see it as just that. If you're planning to spend somewhere in the £20,000 to £25,000 bracket for a compact SUV or an SUV-like crossover, you'll certainly not be short of choice. But choice can sometimes be a compromising thing, and so it is here. So for the premium badge you'd like, you'll have to compromise on equipment. For the practicality you'll need, you'll have to compromise on trim and build quality. And for the off-road ability you'll maybe sometimes want, you have to compromise on tarmac driving pleasure. Now, Volkswagen understands this, which is why in 2008 they bought us this car, the Tiguan, a contender in this class that's arguably less compromised than any other, especially in the revised guise that arrived here in the middle of 2011, and that's the model that we're testing here. It's been a hugely successful car for Volkswagen, one of its big four sellers in the UK, having accounted for over 600,000 global sales by the time this facelifted version arrived. And the reasons aren't too hard to fathom. Here you've got all the class of a Land Rover Freelander or a Toyota RAV4 style compact SUV at a significant saving in cost, pricing not being too much more than you'd pay for a budget brand Far Eastern compact SUV. The dynamics strike an appealing balance too, with tarmac travel to a standard not too far off that of a Kuga or Qashqai-like pretend SUV crossover model, matched to off-road ability that cars of that kind could never consider. So when the time came for this facelifted version, not a lot being wrong, there wasn't a great deal to fix. A slightly smarter look, a range of slightly pokier, more efficient engines, and some useful splashes of high technology about cover it. But will that be enough in a sector brimming with ever toughening competition? Let's find out. When this Tiguan first was launched on the market, it was one of the few compact SUVs you could switch straight into from an ordinary family hatchback without noticing much difference. Now today almost all cars in this segment are like that, but this remains an appealing choice, one of the keener models in its class on tarmac. Now, even if you specify your car with the optional XDS electronic differential from the Golf GTI, it's still not quite as sharp through the corners as a rival Ford Kuga or Nissan Qashqai class crossover. But then those cars can get little further than a muddy car park when it comes to going off-road. Likely Tiguan owners won't be wanting to go through the Namibian wilderness, but they do often need their cars to tow and deal with the kind of gnarlier, muddy tracks that you'd hesitate to attempt in a crossover. I'll get to the muddy stuff in a minute, but first you're going to want to know how this car will feel on the school run and around town where it'll spend the majority of its time. Pretty good is the answer. Body roll is well controlled, and the electric power steering system is responsive. It's true that the ride may be a little firm and springy for some tastes, which perhaps is why a number of owners have christened their cars Tigger. If that's an issue for you, then you might want to specify the optional ACC adaptive chassis control system, via which you can set the car up exactly as you want, depending on the mood that you're in or the road that you're on, altering its suspension characteristics via normal, sport and comfort modes. Around town, thanks to good all-round visibility and a decent 12-metre turning circle, this is an easy car to use. The self-parking system, which is an option, it's called Park Assist, and it's a real boon in such an urban environment, effortlessly steering you into the tightest spaces. Out on the open road, as I've already suggested, there's nothing especially memorable about the driving experience, but it's pleasantly refined, and there's a slick feel to the 6-speed manual gearbox. As an option, you can specify the Volkswagen Group's silky smooth 7-speed DSG twin clutch semi-automatic. Right from the beginning of its life, all the Tiguan's engine wear has been turbocharged, and nothing's changed on that front with this revised version. 9 out of every 10 buyers of this car opt for diesel, and today there's a choice of 3 2-litre TDI units developing either a 110, 140 or 170 PS. The 2 lower powered units come with a choice of either 2-wheel drive or 4Motion 4-wheel drive. But I can't really see the point of going for the lower powered variant, since it doesn't cost much less and it saves you nothing on running costs. Most buyers then understandably opt for the middle of the road 2-litre TDI 140, which manages rest to 60 in 10.2 seconds and goes on to a top speed of nearly 120 miles an hour, regardless of whether you opt for 2 or 4-wheel drive. Here I've opted for the slightly pokier diesel Tiguan, the 2-litre TDI 170 4Motion, which reduces the rest to 60 time to 8.9 seconds and maxes out at 125 miles an hour. If you are one of the few Tiguan customers considering petrol power, then the choice lies between a couple of TSI units. There's a 160 PS 1.4, which comes with the option of either 2-wheel drive or 4Motion 4-wheel drive, and a 2-litre unit with the choice of either 170 or 210 PS. The latter unit is from the Golf GTI and powers this unassuming little car from rest to 60 in just 7.8 seconds on the way to a top speed of 134 miles an hour. Now, all the most powerful Tiguan models feature 4Motion 4-wheel drive as standard, and it's a setup that normally, in the interest of fuel saving, diverts just 10% of power to the rear axle in normal driving conditions. Should the rear axle mounted Haldex electro-hydraulic clutch detect wheel slip, however, it's capable within milliseconds of diverting as much as 100% of the torque rearwards, the proportion adjusted to suit the conditions. Now, these mechanicals won't be tough enough to facilitate really extreme off-road use, but then the 195mm of total ground clearance wouldn't really allow for that anyway. But it is all enough to get most owners a surprising distance off tarmac. If you want to see how far that is, then you'll need to be amongst the 3% of Tiguan buyers who specify their cars in escape form, an option limited only to the 2-litre TDI 140 PS variant. Now, Volkswagen has developed a different front end specifically for this version that improves the approach angle from 18 degrees to 28 degrees, and that can make quite a difference when it comes to avoiding off-roading panel damage. Escape buyers get an off-road mode, supposed to improve and simplify control of the vehicle off the beaten track. Activating this function makes braking and throttle more appropriate to off-piste conditions, reduces the likelihood of stalling, provides assistance to get you up steep slopes, and gives you a hill descent control to help you easily down them. All Tiguans get a rear departure angle of 28 degrees and a breakover angle of 20 degrees. But if you have to ask about that when you're out and about, then you're probably somewhere you shouldn't have ventured with this car in the first place. The Tiguan has always been smartly but inoffensively styled, hardly aggressive and muscular, which is apparently the kind of thing the design team were aiming at. Now, you couldn't really use those adjectives to describe this revised version either, but Klaus Bischoff and the styling team have neatened the front end up with the same kind of horizontally lined grille that you'll find on Volkswagen's larger Touareg luxury SUV. Double chromed louvres and daytime running lights in these optional bi-xenon headlamps complete the more upmarket look. Moving towards the back, there are some nice design touches, like these small plastic surrounds on the squared off wheel arches that can be unclipped for off-road use and, if necessary, replaced afterwards. You've also got these classy aluminium roof rails on most models and sharply lit LED lights at the back. Now, as before, it's all Golf based underneath, but features a tougher modular subframe that's partly steel that'll better be able to withstand off-road buffeting. At the wheel, you'd certainly feel that you were in a Golf were it not for the slightly raised driving position. The leather trimmed steering wheel feels good to hold, adjusts for both reach and rake, and is perfectly positioned for quality switchgear that falls nicely to hand. It's a practical cabin too, with door bins that can accommodate a sizable drinks bottle, a cooled glove box, plenty of cup holders, and most models featuring under-seat drawers for both front seat passengers. At the rear, Volkswagen has built in much of the flexibility that you'll find in its Tiguan Mini MPV. The rear seat itself, for example, can be pushed forwards and backwards by up to 16 centimetres, so you can prioritise either rear seat legroom or luggage space behind. If you're not using the central part of the seat, it can be folded down to create an armrest with cup holders. The seat back itself can be reclined by up to 23 degrees for greater comfort in longer journeys. Now, as usual in this class of car, 3 adults might be a bit squashed on the back seat here, but 2 will be just fine with decent standards of head, leg and shoulder room, and 3 kids will certainly be very comfortable. Out back, there's 470 litres of total luggage space and extra room under the floor for small valuables should you need it. Now, this push forward section of the rear bench is very helpful when it comes to accommodating longer items like skis, and you can also carry quite heavy things thanks to a payload capacity of 670 kilograms. Now, it's a practical load area too, with a 12-volt power socket, 4 lashing eyes and an optional luggage net to separate your eggs from your iron brew. And if you need more space, you can flatten the 60-40 split folding rear seats to release up to 1,510 litres of fresh air. Navigating your way through this market sector and deciding where the Tiguan fits into it isn't that easy, but I'll try and guide you through it. This car is priced in the £21,000 to £28,000 bracket, and that slots it neatly between the budget-based Far Eastern alternatives and the more established, more capable Freelander class compact SUVs you'd probably rather have. The pricing for this Volkswagen pitches it directly against Ford's Kuga, but the Ford is slightly less practical and certainly not as good off-road. Now, most models these days in this class come with the option of 2-wheel drive, as is the case with lower powered Tiguans, but opting to do without Ford-driven wheels in this car will only save you about £1,000, which might end up seeming like a false economy come January or February. As for rivals, well, you probably already know that brands like Hyundai, Kia and Jeep will be cheaper. So I'm going to compare instead to the Land Rover, Honda and Toyota type models you're more likely to be pitching this car against. So let's start with petrol power and a 1.4 TSI 160 PS 4Motion Tiguan. That car would save you a few £100 on a rival Honda CR-V 2-litre petrol and about £2,500 on a comparable Toyota RAV4 2-litre VVTi. All very nice, but if you're like the majority of Tiguan buyers, you'll be wanting to know how the diesel models compare to the opposition. And perhaps more specifically, you'll be interested in the 2-litre TDI 140 variants that account for the majority of sales. Now, if you go for one of those with 2-wheel drive, then you're looking at a saving about £1,500 over a comparable Toyota RAV4 2.2 D4D with 2-wheel drive, and a saving of about £2,500 over a rival Land Rover Freelander ED4. Go for the 2-litre TDI 140 Tiguan with 4Motion 4-wheel drive, and the Land Rover alternative is much more closely priced, but you're still looking at saving about £1,500 over a comparable Honda CR-V 2.2 iD-Tech, or about £2,500 over a comparable Toyota RAV4 2.2 D4D with 4-wheel drive. Now here I've opted for the top of the range diesel Tiguan, the 2-litre TDI 174 Motion, and this car would save me a couple of £1,000 over a rival thirstier Land Rover Freelander SD4 190. Whichever 2 or 4-wheel drive Tiguan model you choose, the 1.4 or the 2-litre TSI petrol variants, or either of the 2-litre TDI diesels, you should find your car to be decently equipped, because all variants come with alloy wheels, an alarm, power heated door mirrors, all-round electric windows, climatic semi-automatic air conditioning, a trip computer, and an 8-speaker MP3 compatible CD stereo with a DAB digital radio and an AUX in socket. There are the usual plusher trim levels if you want more kit than that. In the admittedly unlikely event that you're going to be regularly taking your Tiguan off-road, you might want to consider the Escape model. It's based on the 2-litre TDI 140, and it comes with a shorter front overhang, side, front and underbody protection, hill descent control to get you down slippery slopes, a compass, and various off-road orientated engine settings to aid smooth progress in really mucky conditions. All of which will seem a bit pointless in the urban jungle which represents this car's preferred habitat. A more useful feature here will be the park assist system, able to locate and automatically guide you into the tighter space. Other popular options include keyless entry and start, bi-xenon headlamps, a vast panoramic glass roof, and a colour touchscreen sat-nav. Tarmac driving options include the XDS electronic differential, which will keep the car steadier at speed through tighter bends, and also the ACC adaptive chassis control system, via which you can tweak the suspension to suit the mood you're in and the road that you're on. Safety kit includes 6 airbags with rear side bags as an option, and an ABS system with an emergency brake assist function for sudden stops, instantly advertised to following motorists by hazard warning lights that automatically flash as you screech to a halt. There are the usual Isofix child seat fastenings, anti-whiplash head restraints, and electronic assistance for traction and stability control. Most models are also fitted with an innovative fatigue detection system that monitors your steering and driving behaviour for the first 15 minutes of every journey and then periodically checks on it thereafter. Now, if your steering and driving inputs are indicative of tiredness during that time, then the system will sense it and automatically bleep at you until you stop for a break. To go further on the safety front, you'll need to resort to the options list and tick the box for features like lane assist, which is able to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway. Then there's sign assist, which can read and display speed limit signs on the road as you pass them. And high beam assist, which can automatically dip your headlamps for you at night. And while we're talking about automatic functionality, I should also mention that the Volkswagen Group's silky smooth 7-speed twin clutch DSG automatic gearbox is a £1,500 option on 2-litre TDI and 2-litre TSI models. Despite an increase in power for many Tiguan models in this revised range, CO2 returns are either the same or better than before. Most models feature Blue Motion technology badging, which, as you probably guessed, heralds an approach of optimum efficiency. So all such models get a start-stop system which cuts the engine when you don't need it, when you're waiting at the lights or when you're stuck in traffic. There's also battery regeneration, which reclaims energy that would otherwise be lost under braking. Now, as a result of all this, the 2-litre TDI 144 Motion variant that most customers buy returns 48.7 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 150 grams per kilometre of CO2. And those are figures you can further improve by specifying the optional semi-automatic DSG gearbox. Order it with 2-wheel drive and those figures improve to 53.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 139 grams per kilometre of CO2. And those are the same returns that you'll get with the feebler 2-litre TDI 110 PS model. Now, at the other end of the Tiguan diesel scale, the 2-litre TDI 174 Motion model that I'm driving here does without the Blue Motion technology tweaks, but still manages 47.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 158 grams per kilometre of CO2. But whichever diesel Tiguan you choose, you'll be looking at fuel and CO2 returns that are 10 to 15% better than those of a rival Land Rover Freelander. When it comes to running costs for this Volkswagen though, it's best not to dismiss the petrol option entirely, especially if, like many Tiguan owners, you're a low mileage motorist. After all, the entry-level two-wheel drive petrol 1.4 TSI 160 PS variant, that car will save you about £1,200 on the volume 2-litre TDI 140 diesel I've been talking about. And it still manages 42.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 156 grams per kilometre of CO2. If you go for one of the more powerful petrol Tiguans, the 2-litre TSI models, well, you're looking at 33.2 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 199 grams per kilometre of CO2. What else? Well, residual values will be strong and insurance costs are reasonable, ranging between groups 14 and 19E on the 1 to 50 grouping scale. Servicing costs can be kept down too, thanks to a choice of servicing regimes. There's time and distance. That's a regime for low mileage motorists, but if you cover more than 25 miles a day, you might want to look at the long life servicing program that Volkswagen offer. Now, use this and you could go as long as, 2 years or 20,000 miles between a major service. Now, it's not difficult to see why the Tiguan is such a popular choice in its sector here in the UK. You get pretty much all the quality of a premium badged compact SUV for the price of a budget brand contender. You get pretty much all the tarmac handling ability of a Qashqai-like crossover with virtually all the off-road ability of something more capable. And you get the enduring appeal of the Volkswagen badge with the enduring resale values that go along with it. Such has always been this model's appeal, and not much has changed with the revised version. It's not a car for driving enthusiasts or those who live halfway up Snowdon, but then such people are unlikely to be shopping in this sector anyway. What it does offer in this improved form are running costs from an ever more efficient range of engines that make the transition to a car like this from an ordinary family hatchback less painful than ever. And an extra dash of polish in everything that it does that'll make you feel as good when you pull back the bedroom curtains as you will when you're driving it. A sensible choice then, but one you'll enjoy making.